When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
Get my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just
Look at Donnie.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, and dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we've been so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover, entered the winning for the long haul. Baby, we just want to take a moment and congratulate the new governor, Wes Moore, new first lady, Dawn Moore. State of Maryland is moving forward. Here to discuss the state of politics here in Maryland is one of the premier political analysts of our time. His name is Richard DeShay Elliott. He's a recent honoree of the Joe Mann's Black Wall Street Award. Richard also has been a contributor and host on the blackusa.news network and on bemorenews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Now, before we bring you on, we want you to know, in case you've never heard a dynamic young black man speak before, one who is pretty entrenched in Maryland politics, who has an opinion one way or the other. Well, enough of that. Without further ado, the one and only, and he's very dressed up today, Richard DeShay Elliott. Thanks for the necktie and suit and tie. Richard, how are you?
I'm good. The necktie and suit jacket was yesterday for Mr. Moore, Governor Moore's inauguration. I actually did dress up for that. I know that's rare. Happy to be here and to discuss with you, Donnie. I appreciate you giving me a forum to answer some questions and to let me know what you're thinking as well.
Good morning to you.
Morning. Top of the day.
How's your family?
Top notch. Grandma just got back from Lynchburg, Virginia.
What's in Lynchburg?
The rest of the family's only very, very small. So basically all the people who aren't up here in PG are in Lynchburg.
A lot of history there in Lynchburg. I have a grandma, she's from South Boston, Virginia.
It's like, especially comparing it to Maryland, Virginia is huge. The northernmost tip of Virginia is further north than the southernmost point of New Jersey. The westernmost point of Virginia is further west than Detroit. Virginia is enormous. Maryland, by comparison, is maybe like a quarter of the size.
We're smarter.
I prefer it up here. Main thing I like in Virginia outside of the family is the views. You get beautiful views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. You don't get mountain views in central Maryland, unfortunately.
They say Virginia is for lovers. Virginia did have, they had the first black governor?
Yes, Douglas Wilder. In fact, I may have a book. Yes, yeah, I do have a book about Doug Wilder right here. I don't know if I can pull it out. When Hell Froze Over, the untold story of Doug Wilder. Wilder went and campaigned out in coal country, out in Southwest Virginia. and was able to pull votes people never thought he would have been able to get. But now, rather than talking about the first black governor of Virginia and the first black governor in American history, we could talk about the third, Governor Wes Moore, whose term essentially begins today.
Now, the second black governor, what was that? New York, New Jersey?
So his Deval Patrick from Massachusetts. There also was a black governor who served in New York, David Paterson, whose father, I think his name was Basil Paterson, was big time, political machines in the 1960s and 70s in Harlem and in Manhattan. David Paterson became the governor after Elliott Spitzer resigned. So Moore is not the third black person to serve as governor. He's just the third black person to be elected as governor. Oops.
So nonetheless, we are here. Your thoughts on yesterday?
I wasn't able to get a perch to see a lot, but I did see the main thing that was heartening was the sheer number of people that came through. Like I got there at maybe 10:45, and they were shuttling buses from the parking lots over to the inauguration the whole day. So that was like, there were a lot of people who, for me, this is not something new. Seeing a black person in a position of prominence is not new. I had black principal. I've had black delegates. My grandfather was the base commander. It's not a new thing for me, but it's not always for me. It's for the people who have seen the worst of Maryland, when Maryland was one of the most segregated states, when Maryland was one of the—
Oh, you mean when Mike Miller was alive?
Yes. And even more so back to when, there were open segregationists winning the Democratic Party ticket into the 60s.
So that'd be all of our lifetime.
Yes.
So Maryland's a racist state.
I'm not arguing against that. I would just argue without question that yesterday's historic nature means so much more for people who were outright denied accommodations, who suffered through the worst of segregation. And I think that there were a decent number of such folks who were present yesterday.
Like here in Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore is the home of segregation, going back to 1910.
And
Mayor J. Barry Mahul.
Right.
1907 and 1911.
And that, I forget the neighborhood off top, but
Roland Park.
Roland Park is essentially the origin point of, you could say, 21st century segregation, and a lot of
20th century.
I would even go on, because now
20th and 21st century.
Because now what we have is just overlap with existing zoning. In Baltimore, one of the key ways that the city is so divided is where there's one-way streets and where there's throughways.
What do you mean?
So, for example, I lived in, it's not even a neighborhood you've ever heard of, probably. It was called Stone Hill. It was like a sub-neighborhood in Hamden. I lived there simply because I could walk there from Hopkins, or walk from there to Hopkins in 10 minutes or something like that.
The 29th Street?
I think I lived on 27th Street, but I didn't live far from 34th at all. I didn't live far from the Avenue at all.
Did you ever get stuck up?
No.
Oh, well, see, you learned something very valuable.
But that street was a one-way. The only people who ever went on that one-way were people that lived there and delivery drivers.
So you think one-way streets are a symbol of segregation?
Absolutely, because the intent of them is essentially to know who'd be coming through at any given point. Either they'd be a resident, a guest of a resident, or somebody doing a delivery or a service.
Racism is so stupid. I dare not entertain the insidious and cunning nature. Where do racists come from? Their mother, their father? Are they created in a laboratory?
Definitely not the third. I'm against arguing stuff supernatural. I mean, just the society that we have is so built upon that even if one has the best wishes and intent in their hearts, you're building on or profiting from or engaging in a fundamentally racist system. But to argue about the individual aspect is tiring, is not super productive, because one could argue, especially for Black electeds, about how one has heard the theory many times that Black people can't be racist, whereas I would argue that in particular Black folks can be very racist towards other Black folks, maybe more so than others because of position and because people don't assume as much. But rather than focusing on where racism comes from, I'd like to talk about what this new administration has pledged they want to do and some of their partners wish to do in addressing the legacy of racism. Donnie, you may be hardened, or you may be disgusted, or you may just be amazed that during the Master of Ceremonies speech by Anne Arundel County Executive Stuart Pittman yesterday, Stuart Pittman, who in my honest estimation has been one of the best county executives Maryland has had, particularly for his impact on housing, his impact on transportation in a very, very conservative suburban county. Stuart Pittman openly said during the inauguration ceremony for the first Black governor his family story, which was of a Scottish immigrant who was an Annapolis mayor, an Anne Arundel politician, and was a tobacco planter who made his fortune in the 1700s and made the family fortune during slavery. He
should have just said he was a slave owner. He's the descendant of a slave owner. But the Scottish, let's just get that correct, wasn't like the Scottish were the royalty of the United Kingdom. I didn't understand
that. But
last I checked, they were getting their heads chopped off over there. Robert Wallace and and big ups to the freedom fighters. But that's the whole thing that gets me. You oppressed over here. You cry to the world, this is wrong. These ovens are wrong. Racism is wrong. But then you take on the same characteristics of the very people that you hated. Black people do it, white people, Jew, Gentile, Muslim, Christian. People do that. Black people do that.
No question.
White people have been wrong. White people have been wrong. Well, can you move over and let the poor Black people in? Oh, no. We said in the introduction to this show about how many of us have a problem with poor Black people. It's a health problem, according to Michael Zollicoffer. We don't want to be around poor Black people. Do our elected officials want to be around poor Black people, or do they just want to give speeches and tweets and IG messages?
I'll respond with this. If this is the current, if this represents the future, where, at least from my perspective, mind you, this is my perspective and is not representative of anybody else I represent. What is heartening to me to see on your inauguration is making sure that a lot of constituencies are represented. I saw a good number of lobbyists who were there yesterday, including Black lobbyists. I'm not going to insult Black lobbyists because there has to be Black people in lobbying if lobbying exists. I saw some elected officials. But really, I want to see that the youth feels represented by you. And I'm not just saying people who are there to be in the marching band or who are there to be with their parents. Like, I would want to see independent, like, youth leadership who were able to show up and feel represented by the governor, not because they complained about an issue and asked for representation, but because their concerns they know are automatically going to be addressed.
I thought you were going to say because they are young and Black like the governor.
I've said this before, I'll repeat it. The experience of people my age and younger under the Obama presidency, where we experienced, I guess you could say we experienced the highest visibility of representation, ever. We had a Black president who was being both praised and insulted pretty much every day for 8 years.
Who had a very Black wife.
Who had a very Black wife.
Black mother-in-law and 2 very Black daughters.
Yeah, who was not just the image of the Black president, but the image of the stable, responsible Black family for 8 whole years. That was
What,
ingrained
what,
in
a,
us.
what an image
Mhm.
to focus on for 8 years. A nuclear black family.
Mhm.
He wasn't the baby daddy.
Or just like or just an
He was the
individual
father and the
by
husband.
himself. Yeah, he was not just an individual. The father aspect, the husband aspect, a whole lot of that
He
was
ain't have to go to child support.
a lot of that was relayed to us for years. So at least for a lot of people my age and younger, the vision of a person like Wes is not, outside of our conception. Keep in mind, I'm 27. Obama was president from when I was 13 to when I was 21 or so, something like that. So that's
He,
almost
he, he inspired you to go to Hopkins.
I'm not going to say that, but for a third of my life.
Oh, come on, tell the truth, Richard. Did
Well,
Obama inspire you?
It's not about how Obama inspired
That's
me.
not an answer. That's not.
Hold on, Don. It's not about how Obama inspired me. It's about how, for a lot of people,
You inspired Obama?
No, it's about how Obama raised their ceiling of what they thought was possible. For me, I had wanted to be a teacher more so than ever do political stuff. Like, my grandma was a teacher. I wanted to do things, and as you see, I still get to do things education related all of the time. But for many others, they saw purpose to politics even more so than they saw what Obama represented. However, now that we're older, and it's not just about kind of the cultural impact of the Obama presidency, it's the policy impact. And Obama's policy impact is, quite frankly, less than Joe Biden's has been. Sure, the circumstances are different. The politics are completely different. Joe Biden became president during a pandemic where there was widespread demand, became president immediately after Trump. But for the policy impact, people have now seen that having a black leader does not necessarily mean that the black grassroots demands are met or even necessarily addressed.
No, time out. To his credit, the first thing I remember when Barack Obama got into office was the economy. It's the economy, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
What I recall is George W. Bush had decimated the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And he went and started a war because of his daddy.
Hey, Bush is truly like the block that has pushed everything into this weird space that we're in now. I'm not going to give Bush any of it.
They had to let Barack Obama in there,
Yeah.
just like Donald Trump. How worse a president? I mean, why isn't Donald Trump in prison? It's a white male thing.
I'm not gonna speculate.
You know it is. Just say the truth. We say the truth on the show.
I'm not even gonna say for sure that Trump gets away with everything by the end of it. I actually think that by the end of it, Trump will end up getting in trouble. But his is not only just white male entitlement. There's a lot of money.
Well, see, if he was black, they would have locked his ass up as soon as he ended his presidency. But no, they actually let this moron influence elections. Could you believe Dan Cox, for instance, body slammed, what's the name? Kelly Schultz. I couldn't believe it.
I believe it because the same way that in Maryland's Democratic primaries, we've seen there be rising blocks of independent voters, independent elected officials that have a lot of
point with that one though.
With Cox, it was almost 100%. It wasn't just the Trump endorsement, though. Keep one other piece in mind, though. National Democrats spent millions of dollars promoting the fact that Cox was Trump endorsed. There actually might not have been that many Republicans that knew, because Cox really had no money. Cox had like less money than like probably the last seed in the Democratic primary. But a lot of people found out about his endorsement because National Democrats did not just an ad, I think, highlighting it, but they also did a poll where they informed Republican primary voters that Trump was excuse me, that Cox is Trump endorsed. However, Hogan did not really have the stranglehold on Maryland Republicans that people did. Hogan's strength was always among Maryland independents and Maryland Democrats. Always. Hogan is leaving office with a higher approval rating among black people than white people. Hogan is leaving office with a higher approval rating among Maryland Democrats than Maryland Republicans.
Do you think Hogan would consider running for mayor of Baltimore?
I doubt it. He doesn't have presidency there. He would have to run as a Democrat almost certainly if he ran it.
No, they wouldn't want that. We need a Republican in Baltimore for checks and balances. There's no checks and balances. It's all Democrat, and all of the Democrats cover each other's back. It's like one gang dominating the scene. There are no Crips and no BGF. It's just Bloods, all Bloods. You got to mix it up so that you can have a full council where everybody's represented. Are blacks represented in the Democratic Party well enough? I think of Marianne Lasante from Harford County, who called your district the nigger district.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that she's in politics still.
Well, fortunately, she did lose her primary. She actually ran for higher office. Yeah, she ran for higher office, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she was a delegate. So I'll relay the whole story. She was a delegate.
I don't care. She's not that important. She's really not interesting at all.
She ran for Senate.
She's a dirtbag that should have never been in politics. Right over there with Donald John Trump. She doesn't deserve time on this show. What do you expect of Wes Moore?
So I'll go over what he has expressly stated he wished to do during his inauguration and during the campaign. He has expressly expressed interest in raising the minimum wage. He talked about a $15 minimum wage on the campaign trail and in his inauguration. They talked about fixing the toxic air pollution that is an issue in our state. They talked about growing the economy in our state. Wes was emphatic for quite a bit. I think maybe his predominant theme that he spoke about, not just in kind of messaging, but also in who was in his cohort, was that he's going to emphasize Black-owned businesses locally. Minority businesses.
In order to push Black-owned businesses, do you see the cabinet secretaries who have been put in position supporting that cause? How many of them are Black?
So as of yet, 2. As an amendum, the 2 that are Black that are named, I don't have their names off top. One of them is the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and one is the Secretary of Commerce. So he did choose an African American Secretary of Commerce. He has also created.
That's the job that what's the chair of the Black Caucus?
Daryl Barnes. That's the position that Daryl Barnes was seeking.
That's what Francho promised him.
Yep.
Do you think Francho would have made Daryl Barnes the Secretary of Commerce?
I believe so, because much like Wes has started to do, Wes has chosen a few individuals from Annapolis to serve in administration. Paul Pinsky, the senator, is going to lead our energy administration. Susan Lee, who's our first Asian American senator in the state, who I have great respect for, is going to be our Secretary of State. So any governor is likely to choose multiple individuals from within Annapolis. One, because they're likely to have expertise within administration.
Are you telling me that Blacks don't have the kind of expertise to run the state of Maryland?
I absolutely believe we do. I think Daryl Barnes would make an excellent Secretary of Commerce.
What's his track record to suggest that?
So for one, Daryl Barnes served as Secretary of the Black Caucus immediately following the resignation of former delegate Cheryl Landis. One of the main issues that Daryl Barnes...
Cheryl Landis?
Yep. After Cheryl Landis resigned because of improprieties, Daryl Barnes became...
Landis?
Yep. Not Landis. I'm sorry. Cheryl Glenn. I'm sorry. Cheryl Landis is a friend from Prince George's. She's a former
Okay, I
Bowie
just wanted
Nugget.
you to clean that up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Cheryl Landis didn't do anything wrong, and she's a nice lady. Didn't mean to insult her. Cheryl Glenn, the Baltimore delegate, resigned a few years ago
You want that weed, holler.
over improprieties in the medical marijuana licensing granting.
She said, got them licenses out, got them licenses out. Sound like kind of carrying lines, don't it?
No comment. Although I did meet an individual yesterday who told me more about the story, so there may be more to come out about that. He may contact you, in fact. But so after Daryl Barnes became the chair of the Black Caucus, that was an issue he's been trying to address for years, trying to fix the issues in the licenses, and there has not really been public will from some of the other delegates to fix it. Daryl Barnes also is a business owner. He owns a company that sells wonderful bottled water that was keeping us really, really hydrated on the campaign trail, particularly on election day. And this bottled water company operates in several states. So no matter what I can tell you about, for example, procurement policy, what I can tell you about the tax policy, no matter what I can tell you about the makeup of a different board, I have never run a multi-state business. Daryl Barnes has. So I think that experience, along with the fact that he had relationships in the Black Caucus and in the General Assembly, would have made Daryl Barnes a particularly effective Secretary of Commerce. However, Daryl is still serving in the General Assembly and is still going to be very effective there. And it's
What
still
I
going to be.
found, Richard, is that our biggest challenge is getting the black politician, the black preacher.
I'm here just getting tea.
I found that our biggest challenge today is getting the black politician, the black preacher, the black business person, so on and so forth, all on the same page. Getting the black media involved.
Mm-hmm.
First black governor, chair of the Black Caucus, 90-day Maryland General Assembly session. The black media plays a specific and unique role in all of this because we're going to tell a story that the Sun, the Banner, the Brew are not going to tell, not ever in a million years.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to tell the full story of the struggle, the challenges, the opportunities, and we're going to critique when things don't go our way, the same way Pat Robertson is on television and his derelict-looking son. I mean, his son really looked like he escaped from an insane asylum, but they're on television every day preaching politics and religion, and it's like, boy, go sit down somewhere. You ever had your grandson come and try to tell you about the birds and the bees? That's what it's like watching the 700 Club.
I don't think I've ever watched it. I haven't watched cable now, Donnie, in some
I don't
years.
mean to watch it. I, getting my little dose of hate off of Fox 45 in the morning, and they kind of come on right after. So if you don't cut the television off, next thing you look up, you see these two vampire-looking dudes. I mean, they remind me of Dracula. But it just amazes me how they talk about faith and religion and how God is a Republican and Donald Trump is like Jesus's first cousin. It's so appallingly ignorant. Mm-hmm. I've never seen such ignorance in my life. They would even tell you that Jesus the Christ was a white man when it's nothing but sunshine over there in Africa. Everybody wants to be black. Everybody wants our rhythm, but nobody wants our blues. Anyway, are you optimistic that Wes Moore will make a difference here in the state of Maryland?
Absolutely. There's certain things where I am particularly optimistic. So I'll start with the cabinet picks. So he has not laid out an agenda with bills and such, but they've laid out the cabinet picks. Some of the people they've chosen, I already said Susan Lee. Susan Lee has been serving in Annapolis for a long time, longly regarded as a pretty independent, good-thinking legislator, has had consistently good votes on some of the issues I paid attention to. introduced a bill to fix the historical curriculum, not just for Black Americans, but for everybody. And I thought mixing that all together in one bill was genius because it might actually pass. So Susan Lee is the Secretary of State who's really going to be the person who's helping to get people into positions where they can do things. So I have a high opinion of her. I think she'll do a good job in that position, and several other people I've spoken with feel the same. Jake Day, who is the mayor of Salisbury on the Eastern Shore, who's an architect by trade. He's been chosen as the Secretary of Housing and Community Development. I think that Jake Day is going to be outstanding in that role. I think that if we can get Jake Day talking with people like you and Will Hanna and some other people in Baltimore, we can start to actually build affordable.
You just put me in the same conversation with Will Hanna. Okay,
Hey,
all right. I'm just trying to see where you're going with this. You know,
I think that both of you would at least have a vision for a project you propose to the state secretary of housing and community development that would be of benefit to Baltimoreans.
We like to see these houses, these vacant houses, continue to be torn down. What's it called? Project Core. I mean, Project Core was the first time in my lifetime that we saw a strategic removal of vacants, which have been known to cause a lot of fires and further property damage, and even took the lives of 3 Baltimore City firefighters last year.
Right.
And so we'd like to see that effort continued and in an intelligent fashion, because we've never seen this progress before. And it was started by a Republican. I only say that because we as a people are heavily Democrat, but I've been asking for years the return on our investment.
I'm with you. And I think that that's maybe the ultimate piece that should make this an administration that cares. Wes Moore won on the strength of the Black vote. In the primary, in particular, he romped in Prince George's, he romped in Charles, he won Baltimore City, he did good in the Black areas in Baltimore County, and then in the Black rural areas like Harford County, some parts of the shore. That is where Wes Moore won. Wes Moore owes his nomination and his success to Black Maryland. Some of the but let me finish one more piece of the cabinet thing that gives me optimism. He's added a position called the Special Secretary of Opioid Recovery, where he's selected Hagerstown Mayor Emily Keller for that position. If we can have a Special Secretary of Opioid Recovery, I absolutely think that, as Crancho was proposing, we can get a Special Secretary for Diversity and Inclusion that can have sub-departments that can get things like Special Secretary, or excuse me, Department of Black Home Ownership, Department of Black Health, Department of Black Transportation. If we can get a Special Secretary of Opioid Recovery, we deserve a Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion that has teeth, budget, and cabinet appointees that know what they're doing.
So, Richard, back in 2002, Don Flythe Moore was advisor to Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. Kathleen Kennedy Townsend did not listen to Don Moore. She chose an overnight Republican, Charles R. Lawson, a Republican admiral, U.S. Navy, to be her running mate. Malik Rahman recently got his wings. He told me the story of how he tried to say, Kathleen, come here. I want to introduce you to one of your constituents, very influential person. And she looked right, looked left. This is Malik telling the story. And she comes over and says, listen, I'm not my father and I'm not my uncle. And she turned her lily white ass around and walked the other way. That was Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. Don was trying to tell her how to win. But this woman, in her pride, refused to listen. Consequently, Maryland ended up getting the first Republican governor in 36 years. Now, that was 2002. Fast forward to about 2012, 2013. I remember interviewing Wes Moore at the Brookings Institute, Washington, D.C., and the conversation teetered around running for office. A decade, 20 years later, 2 decades later, Dawn Moore is the first Black First Lady of Maryland. What influence would Dawn Moore have on this state?
I think that Dawn. So I'll use the most basic analogy of the Clintons. It's an extra cabinet member who's always around. From Dawn, not only advised Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, I believe she also worked with Anthony Brown in a past period, possibly when he was lieutenant governor.
Attorney
So
General Anthony Brown. Yes,
yeah,
yes, she did when he ran.
so Dawn has a lot of experience, has been in state politics for a very long time, and I think is going to have a influential role. Also, the lieutenant governor, I can't not mention her. Aruna Miller, I think, is going to serve, like in a lot of other states. The lieutenant governor is effectively the governor's representative in the General Assembly or in the State House. I think that's the role Aruna Miller is about to play. I think Aruna Miller is going to be seen, or at least heard, ushering support for certain legislation, helping legislators draft certain bills, and essentially trying to be a person getting this administration's agenda through as quickly as possible. And I do think that this administration in the first year is going to have a large percentage of their agenda enacted because of yet another Black woman, Adrienne Jones. I think that Adrienne Jones remains the most powerful individual in the General Assembly in Annapolis. And I think that she is going to get a large amount of Wes Moore's agenda enacted very quickly.
So one of the major problems, let me just take a moment and plug my 2 books. I'm the author of Unapologetically Black, the Donnie Glover autobiography going back to 2015, and I Am Black Wall Street, giving the history of the story before Tulsa even came about. Both are available on Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Richard, how about your book? Are you putting a plug in for your book?
No, because you can get all my research available for free, and I'd encourage you to read it all for free.
No, Richard. Where's your book?
No,
Richard. Look.
I have a copy of it. Where'd I put it? Is this it?
What I'm saying, Richard, I'm working on my 3rd book, and I think you ought to be working on a book too, don't you think?
Yeah, I have a book. I'm just not plugging it because it's just a compilation of all of my different research projects, all of which are available for free. And I'm not going to tell somebody to spend $70 on Amazon for free research. It's cool, Donnie.
Richard, work with me. This is blackusa.news. We push Black products, okay?
Hey,
when the CARE commercial comes on at 2:00 in the morning, you're trying to watch the rest of your movie, and you see this NGO, this non-governmental organization, these poverty pimps, the same poverty pimps we have in East and West Baltimore, they do have passports. So they put a picture up of a hungry kid in Africa or of a starving dog, and, they get people to cry and put up their credit card information. Nobody says anything about that. So plug your damn book. Okay. So what's your next book? How about that? What's your next book?
So I think that we definitely need to do some type of research project, lengthy review on how Black politics in Prince George's and Baltimore has evolved. I'd say from in the post-World War II period, really about how from GIs returning from combat in World War II, who entered organizations like the NAACP, and there's a lot of different political clubs in Baltimore City, and have really helped to make our state into a hub of Black excellence in the nation, highly educated, well off, good jobs, and have in the long term built up the Prince George's, you could say, political machine, you could say Democratic Party, you could say the factions of the Democratic Party here, and how it's really changed from when Prince George's had conservative patronage politics and when Baltimore had a lot of white political clubs that ran the city. That 70 years or so of history is not really chronologued very well. People aren't even really aware of political clubs. And I've only ever found, I believe, one book about even the white political clubs, which was written by the author of Baltimore, A Political History. I forget the person's name, but he's a professor at Hopkins. He sent me that. If we were able to talk about all of that, it would really show how Maryland's political history is so personal, is so patronage driven, is so much about what can you do for me relative to a lot of other states.
That sounds like the political answer. I want to know who's going to free all of these black people who are incarcerated with weed charges when you've now made smoking recreational marijuana legal. When are we going to undo those sentences?
Oh, okay. So for that's not a book. That's what we're going to be pushing this year in Annapolis. So there's going to be legislation.
Nothing to push. Change the damn law.
Absolutely. There's
And
already.
Let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
They could go get people from the moon. Get the damn procurement officers to dole out the damn contracts to black people. I tell you, I fundamentally disagree with the whole MBE system. They make a black business. They make a black business, the state of Maryland, long before Westmore. They make a black business. I gotta prove that I'm black. What kind of crap is that?
Right.
Just to get in the door on some subcontracts.
Right. And it gives a cap on those subcontracts. Well,
I don't want that. I want to compete at the table with the big dogs. University of Maryland, Maryland State Lottery, Maryland Stadium Authority. Make them honor the damn rules.
Hey, so the governor gets
make them honor the rules. They should have to follow MBE protocol. 30% of the contracts with our state dollars should be going to black people. And listen, I don't even like the damn term minority because I ain't no damn minority. It lumps black men in the same category with white women. How idiotic is that? White women aren't a minority. If they get 95% of the contracts, they are a majority. Stop that foolishness. Who's going to have the testicular fortitude to ensure that black people eat? Damn all of the window dressing. We need money.
Yeah, so Moore appoints several people to the Maryland Stadium Authority. Moore appoints multiple people to the Maryland State Lottery Commission. I think that's the name of the body. We'll be appointing multiple people to the Maryland State Retirement Board of Trustees. And not only do we need to be getting better return on investment for the services that we're getting, but we should be getting expanded services. Maryland Stadium Authority, for example, only covers a couple of stadiums. Why, for example, is Wayne Curry Stadium not covered by the Maryland Stadium Authority's bonding authority? Why are we not expanding the authority of these bodies with Westmore so that we can get more coverage by area in Prince George's and Baltimore City by some of these bodies? Not so that the state has authority over them, but so the state can give them more funding in appropriate situations.
Richard, do you foresee the white guys having to move over to let other people eat?
Not by choice. No, absolutely not. It comes down to
Westmore moving them over so that other people can eat like us.
We'll see. We will see. We will see.
Did you ever see Barack Obama have a black moment?
A few. Absolutely. Particularly for the time. Saying that if he had a son,
you want to see a James Evans moment. You know, when James got mad and his nose flared up and he started yelling.
I would love to see rightful indignation from leadership to get people what they need. Will we see it? We shall see.
Baltimore City public schools, Prince George's public schools are the worst school districts in the state, 23 and 24. What do they have in common, Richard?
Majority black.
Is there a task force to address? You just said Baltimore and Prince George's got this man elected. Will there be a task force to address Baltimore, Prince George's County public schools, the two worst in a majority and a 30% black state now with a black governor, will they become a priority?
I think that what they're likely to do, if anything, and that's if anything additional, is I think that we have slightly better bargaining room within the Kerwin Commission. But do I see, for example, a Baltimore and Prince George's specific
Task force.
a black school?
Task force.
Actually, hold on, we got to throw Charles in there too. So a black school district specific task force agenda where we are getting specific monies, where we are getting specific slots for the state can hire people, you know, as teachers, and the state will pay for them rather than the school system.
We have money for new stadiums. They promised money for education.
Mhm.
We got a new football stadium, a new baseball stadium. $15 billion have come through the Maryland State Lottery. But we have classrooms in Baltimore City with no air in the warmer months and no heat.
And we have every way you could bet on sporting events from here to Cambodia now in the state of Maryland.
And now we have the little leprechaun comedian telling African Americans and others to get involved in sports gambling.
Yeah, to gamble, and I don't bang with
What's
gambling.
the little guy named? The little guy looks like he's on a trampoline. What's his name?
I don't know. I don't because
Kevin Hart. That's his name. $450 million. He's worth $450 million and is pushing sports gambling in my state. He's not funny anymore.
Hey,
He's
Donnie,
despicable.
I highly.
That's what we do when we get a couple of dollars, a couple of beans. We just sell out the whole damn black race.
Yep, and the gambling barrage, the true barrage of gambling.
We have no equity in that state.
Not at all. And I looked at the numbers. In
Thank
fact,
you, Martin O'Malley. Hey, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin O'Malley.
Not only do we have no equity in the stake, and we as a state, the first, like, I think they did an analysis the first 10 days.
We don't even own the steak sauce. We didn't even make our own damn steak sauce. You can do that in the back.
So the gambling rollout is definitely indicative of poor long-term equity and inclusion practices, in fact, not only that don't invest in our communities, but that take money away from. The amount of people I've seen talking about gambling has been crazy. And I encourage you to, I wrote an article.
Like we don't see it. Even when gambling was coming on, I was saying on my show on Radio 1. So if my neighbor's selling crack, then I should sell crack? Because gambling is an addiction. When you see people gambling all Friday night, if you happen to go to a Arundel Mills Saturday morning, and then people in the casino, 10 a.m. like it's 7 p.m., that's a serious addiction. Some mortgages are not getting paid. Some bills are not being paid. I just have a problem for our best and brightest to be pushing poisons. What's the word? Vices on our people who can least afford it. And white people suffer too.
You know what is
Asians suffer. I see them Latinos down Maryland Live. Have an event at Maryland Live. I will never do an event at Maryland Live. It just adds a whole different complexion to your event.
I agree with you, but the thing to me that made it most obvious that like this is a long-term ploy, and it's not about the short-term profit, it's about the long-term, is there are bets that you are guaranteed to win. So-and-so will score 1 point. So-and-so will get 1 rebound. Guaranteed. Because even if the player like gets hurt, you know, the bet gets canceled. They have a lot of these bets that are guarantees that are
hooked.
Well, no, hold on. Not to get you hooked, Donnie, because I know more than nothing about sports. If I gambled, I would make money. It is to get people who know nothing about sports, who are the most likely to get addicted to winning at anything, to gamble because they see, oh, okay, I've placed 8 bets and I've won. I'm good at this. I'm good at this, Donnie. When the 8 bets are Jokic will score 1 point, LeBron James will get 1 rebound. And
that's my problem with Kevin Hart. He's showing our people how to be a dope fiend.
And they don't even show people how to pay the taxes on it, Donnie. That's terrifying. You know what the percentage is on gambling winnings? Do you know what it is?
I know the house always wins.
Even on your winnings, you pay 25% tax. 25% tax.
I know people who gamble, when they got money, they happy. When they don't, they not happy. And they tell me, can you lend me $20 till we get back home?
I don't gamble.
You ever went on a trip with some people to a gambling spot? And
No.
they be like,
nope.
Can you lend me some money?
No. Nope.
You just got here. I haven't even eaten my free buffet. That would be the only reason in the past you would catch me at a casino. I'm getting that free steak or that cheap ribeye, because that's the only thing you're going to get out of Vegas or Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm.
Or wherever you gamble at.
You might get some free drinks if you pretend like you're going to gamble.
And you're adding in a whole nother monster. Okay, so 9 minutes. What encouragement would you give to Wes Moore?
One, as governor, the primary thing that happens is people ask you for things. You don't tell people what to do. People come and ask you for all sorts of things, pardons, jobs, programs to help them, programs to help you, whatever. That's what being governor is. And hiding from people, being inaccessible to people, having a lot of secretaries who will answer your questions for you, only serves the point of confusion. 2, you owe the black public your victory. Point blank period. Prince George's in Baltimore won you the election, and are owed programs, are owed appointments, are owed policies specific for our communities. 3, Annapolis is very, very complex, and having good people in your cabinet positions is essential for getting not just good bills passed, but getting good bills passed quickly and without a lot of hurdles. 4, our state is largely a money pot, with the state pensions, the state lottery, the money involved in constructing our stadiums and highways, being among our larger sources of money. It's very important that we keep those sources of money local, invested in the communities that use them, and free from the speculation and investment of people who have no interest in those services working well. And I guess finally, please, as best as possible, keep your interest local, because if you are to seek the position of governor, Maryland is a bellwether state, because I foresee
a position of president.
Excuse me. If you are to seek the position of president, as has been presumed, Maryland being moved forward in the primary process, and you again having your bedrock of black Maryland voters, along with just local people who are loyal to their governor, would be worth a lot of votes for trying to win in a contested presidential process. If you want to win President West, you got to be able to hold on to your state at about a 60% clip in a primary, even if you're running against 10 people.
Tell me about Hakeem Jeffries nationally. So right now, he is a voice for black people nationally. He's standing up. He's speaking out. He's using his position wisely.
So Hakeem Jeffries is the first ever African-American to serve in a position of leadership in charge of a body, the state, in charge of the U.S. Senate or the House of Representatives. He leads the House of Representatives. He, like New Yorker, who I deeply respect, Congressman Powell, has emphasized certain issues around the country, while I wish that Hakeem Jeffries was more outspoken on certain issues or cared less about other issues. He does represent a pinnacle of black achievement as of yet in this country, as the most powerful individual. And I believe that in 2 years, he is going to become the first ever African-American to lead a majority party in the history of the country. That is the site to have our eyes on, because right now he's the leader. Let's call him he's the lead middle linebacker. He's leading the defense. You get what I'm saying?
Where do you see the Maryland Republican Party going for the next 4 to 8 years in a rebuilding?
I honestly see a downward spiral because primarily of redistricting in 2030. In 2030, I expect there will only, in the election after 2030, so be the 2032 election, I only foresee 4 to 6.
Is that one? Wow. Hold up. Wait a minute. 27. Wow. We're 2 elections away from the 2030s. That's scary. Woo.
So in 2032, I think that Maryland Republicans.
My grandson ought to be running for office in 7 years. Wow.
I think that by that point,
or running bmorenews.com.
Or running Be More News, hey, keeping a family local, keeping a family business alive. There won't be that many Maryland Republicans in the state Senate by that point. I personally, Hogan is a unique figure.
There ain't that many Republicans. How come Maryland still feel racist? These are racist Democrats? Hold up. You telling me my problem is with racist ass Democrats?
Well, right now, there's only 13.
Mike Miller, was he a racist?
No question. I'm not going to argue against that at all.
No question about it.
No question.
So we're still undoing the mess that he left.
Absolutely. There's a lot regarding Miller's policies of patronage,
bullying,
of bullying, of using illegal tactics or allegedly illegal tactics,
abusing tanning salons,
of arguing for certain redistricting policies. Hey, thank you, Irvin. Irvin Reed. Hey, Irvin Reed is still a historic force that people need to know what he did. Without Irvin Reed, we don't have a me. Irvin Reed helped elect our first African-American Black executive in Prince George's County,
Wayne Curry.
And Wayne Curry himself deserves a large book about not just him, but about his long-term impact on Black suburban politics.
Say it again, Rich.
Black suburban politics.
You said Prince George's deserves a book.
I started a thesis. So we have a book. It's actually a wonderful.
I thought you just said Wayne Curry deserves a book.
No. Hold. So Prince George's has a book. It's called trying to think of the name off top. I
know Wilbert Wilson did The Power That Never Came. Dr. Wilbert Wilson.
Yeah, so there's a book similar, and it has Black Power in the title. I'm forgetting the name off top. It might be like Suburban Black Power. I gave the book away to somebody else. So I don't even have a copy right now.
You never give away books and music. They don't come back.
Hey, I've given away a copy of that book, I think 3 times, and they've never come back. You're absolutely correct.
Like a book, not like a boomerang.
So here, let me look it up actually while we're here.
Tell me about Irvin Reed.
It's called Black Power in the Suburbs. That's it. Black Power in the Suburbs by Dr. I think Valerie Thomas or Valerie Williams. She in 2002 wrote a book about how Prince George's was beginning to change. She included some parts about Wayne Curry's tenure as a county executive, also about what is his name? Served in, he had a commission.
Thornton Commission,
yes.
Alvin Thornton.
And when Thornton served on the Board of Education, but it stopped in 2002. We'd need a book in 2030 about how Prince George's has remained a metropolitan stronghold. And in fact, now Prince George's and Charles is really its own suburban enclave.
I wanted to ask you before we go, what about Charles County? What is the movement there? Southern Maryland.
So
I know Doris Kamek Spencer is there, home of the Southern Maryland Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber down there.
So we got Senator Arthur Ellis, who I believe is a strong voice for Charles County. I have extreme respect for Senator Arthur Ellis, who's also connected with the UMBC Meyerhoff program. For your long future, don't look at me as a link for things. Look at the UMBC program. as a very strong link for black suburbanites in this state. Senator Arthur Ellis had a child that was in the program at the school, I think the same time I was there. You have Delegate
Are
Deborah
you
Davis.
plugging UMBC?
I am plugging UMBC.
Did you know that Freeman Rabowski put an exorbitant amount of money, I want to say 200,000, into this very platform, STEM City USA?
I did not know that, but that's not the first time that he's invested in something that has benefited me. Freeman Rabowski,
200,000, man. He put over damn near $250,000 on this digital technology because of his rapport with Dr. Tyrone Taborn. I love it when I see us making power moves, unapologetically black.
And before we end this call, Wes Moore would be very well served to have Freeman Rabowski in his close leadership and guidance. Freeman Rabowski is arguably the best college president to have ever served in the nation. I do not say that to be a jokester or to value my university too highly, but to take a community college that was essentially made to keep blacks and progressives out of the University of Maryland and turn that university into one of the best feeders into black students going to doctoral and graduate programs for social and hard sciences is an accomplishment of incredible merit. So salute to Dr. Rabowski. I hope Wes Moore is listening to you.
Richard, when are you coming back on our network on a more regular basis? You promised us during the campaign that you were busy.
You give me 24-hour notice and I'm here. 24-hour notice when I'm free and I'm here. You got me. So I think next week, maybe next week.
You're quite the politician. Richard, please tell your mom hello. We appreciate her support. We thank her and your dad for making you and bringing you forth to Black USA.
I appreciate you, Donnie. Happy New Year for you. Happy New Year for all the guests. And I will be back.
Don't forget Pharaoh.
Don't forget who?
Pharaoh.
Who?
The German Shepherd, man.
Happy New Year.
When they send me Christmas cards, they say to Donald Glover and Pharaoh.
All right. Happy New Year to Pharaoh. Happy 7 years.
That's a tail wagging. So you did pretty good. You can't forget Pharaoh, man. Pharaoh is security guard. Okay. Great morning to you.
Black USA News signing off. We will be back to talk about our first black governor. Happy Black Governor Day.
Happy Black Governor Day.
All right. Signing off. Thank you, Don.